Welcome to H2K Infosys. H2K Infosys is a e-verify business based in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. We provide 100% job-oriented, instructor-led, face-to-face, true live online software training programs. It also includes access to cloud test lab with software tools. We provide live project for you to work on. We also provide assistance with mock interviews, resume preparation and review, and job placement assistance. H2K Infosys is trusted by so many students across the world. H2K Infosys provides world-class services in IT training with real-time project work for corporates and individuals, special IT training for MS students in the United States, software design, development, QA manual and automation, performance testing and maintenance, IT staff augmentation, job placement assistance, and tech support.
To connect to the database and retrieve all the information that are required based on the tables, stored procedures, or any other kind of stuff. So normally, let us assume that this is our JVM or this is our Java code, or let us say this is Java application. So whenever we want to connect to the database or whenever we want to retrieve the information from the database, first of all, the purpose of the database is we can store any kind of information on a normal files, or we can expect the file to be available all the time, or we want some sort of dynamic storage, and or else you can say some permanent storage. Normally the solution for that is database. You can make use of any kind of database based on your project requirement. You can go for, I'll tell you some of the vendors like Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, DB2. So these are some of the vendors who has developed on top of native SQL. Whenever we want to retrieve the information from any kind of data storage mechanism, or let us say we are using some current case, we are using MySQL. So database storage, normally it will consist of an IP address and a port combination. Of course, it also requires some kind of DNS details, username and password, and all those information needs to be specified to our Java code as well. Let us say this is our MySQL server. We want to retrieve the information from the database. So that means, first of all, we need to establish the connection to the MySQL server. And we need to specify from which table. Normally the data will be specified in terms of tables in the database. We need to specify on which table we want to retrieve the data based on certain criteria. So even in terms of MySQL server or client architecture, so that normally server consists of all the permanent storage information. Client will be going to access just like your SQL developer or your command prompt or any other kind of mechanism. So you will connect to the server and you will retrieve the information. So for connect to the server, you need IP address and port where exactly your server resides. This is not only with respect to the database, for any kind of application, whichever is required, some public access or outside the environment. Until now, we are only discussing about the standalone clients like Java application running within a main method. So the main method running or the static mechanism static method execution. Those are not exposed to the outside world. So to provide outside world mechanism or outside world access, normally your application or your Java code needs to be available on an application server or web server. We'll discuss about what is meant by web server and application server in later classes. But you guys are already aware of internet or any kind of mechanism, how the application or the web pages will be available on the server and how we are able to request the web page and retrieve the information on the fly. So just like the same way, for any kind of mechanism, you need definitely a server to be available for the application to be running. So in the same way, let us assume that your application database is also running on some IP address and port. Once after that, you need the schema details and you need username and password. So for any kind of database, you need these two information. The first one is IP address and port combination, and the next one is what is the schema and also username and password. These two are required only to connect to the database. Once after that, you need to have tables, and of course you need to have column names and all, but these are all common for any kind of vendors. So here, if you take a look at the architecture, normally this is the Java application running on one server or one machine, and this is the database server which might run on same machine or it can run on a different machine as well. So that means you need a connection across the network. In the sense, let us say this Java application I'm running on my local host, that is my local machine, and this MySQL server, this is running on another machine which is available on the same router or the LAN connection. So I can easily connect to the MySQL server which is available on the LAN connection because I know the IP address and port and I know all the details. So the data transfer has to happen between or across the machines over the network here in this case. But currently we can produce such type of environment with our case. What we'll do is we'll deploy the MySQL server, we'll install MySQL server on our local machine, and we'll specify the IP address and port as localhost, and the port is 3306, which is the default port for MySQL. And also, I asked you guys to create the schema as JavaDB and the username and password as root. Guys, please be on mute. So that means I can use the schema JavaDB and the username and password root, and I know the IP address as localhost and I know the port as 3306. So currently I have all the details about my database. Now come back to our Java application. So from Java application, we are supposed to connect to the external system or external machine. Let us assume that MySQL server resides on some other machine. And here, if you take a look at the vendor specific implementations like Oracle, MySQL, Postgre, and DB2. So the native SQL execution, it won't be a common stuff here. Oracle might use select star from employee where EMP ID equal to single quotes specifying the employee ID. Postgre may use different functionality, different SQL query. Oracle consists of procedures and functions. Postgre doesn't have procedures. It has only the concept of functions. So that means on top of the native SQL, they have developed their own query language. On top of RDBMS, they have developed their own query language, and the syntax might be different between different vendors. So for that purpose only, Java hasn't provided a direct access or a direct class which will be used to connect directly to the MySQL server. Instead of that, Java has set some standard by using some classes which are available in java.sql package. So inside java.sql package, so many classes are available. SQL.statement. So the reason, these are all interfaces, the reason why they haven't provided a class specific implementation and they have provided only a standard is because we have several vendors and later someone else, so let us say someone else newly writing a query language on top of RDBMS. So your Java has to support that one as well. You can't ask Java specification, hey, I have created one more database on my own and I want the vendor specific implementation for that. Not at all acceptable for any kind of spec. So that's the reason they have defined a spec first, an interface definition, a standard for SQL connection or SQL execution kind of stuff. And all the vendors, they are supposed to implement these classes and they are supposed to provide their own definition. So that means let us work with respect to MySQL because we are supposed to work with respect to MySQL only. MySQL dot JDBC dot driver. I'm taking only one class as of now. MySQL, the MySQL database, once they have provided or once they have set a standard for the database, they are supposed to support all kind of programming languages for making the connection. So from outside, it can come from database, or else database client, or else it can come from Java, or it can come from .NET, or curl kind, or it can be from PHP, or any kind of clients they are supposed to support while connecting to the database. That's the reason these guys, they have developed vendor-specific implementations, and in our case, they have provided a jar file which consists of all the implementations related to our native interfaces. So currently, what Java has specified is java.sql.driver. The driver is the main interface which needs to be implemented by any kind of vendor, and this driver is the startup class for making the database connection. So that means this is the important class, or this is the startup class to create any kind of database connections or query executions. Normally from Java application, we can directly connect to the MySQL server and execute the SQL queries. We are supposed to have some intermediate help that will be done by using another class. This is also a vendor specific class, driver manager. The driver manager who will establish the connection to the database by taking all the information, and this driver manager is responsible for creating a connection. Creating a connection means we'll ask from Java, we'll ask the driver manager, hey, go and get the connection to the database. So the driver manager is responsible to talk to the MySQL server and provides a connection to the Java application. So that means currently you have a dedicated path to MySQL server, and by using that connection, you can establish the queries, or you can send the information across the network, and you can retrieve the information across the network. Once a connection has established, so from this place to this place, just like the socket communication, once a connection has established, you can execute any kind of queries, and finally it's your responsibility to close the connection to the server, or else the connection will available as long as it will be terminated automatically. So the first step that we are supposed to follow, there are 4 or 5 steps that we are supposed to follow to make the JDBC working properly with respect to any kind of database. The first one is load the driver into the memory. Load the driver in the sense, currently we are supposed to work with respect to MySQL. So the driver class, the driver implementation class, whatever that was available, you are supposed to load that into the memory and make it available to your driver manager. To load the driver into the memory, I ask you guys to take a look at one particular operation, like creating an instance of a class without using new operator. This will be done by using a class called class, which is available in java.lang package. And for class, there is a method, there is a static method called for name, and here you need to pass the name of the fully qualified class name. Fully qualified class name is nothing but your class name along with the package name. And once after that, if you call a method new instance, this will create an object in the memory. So we know what kind of object this will be going to create. See, the first step is loading the class. Whenever you call the for name by passing the name of the class full name, it will load the class into the memory. And once after that, while calling new instance method, this will create an object. And it will create an object and returns the reference at the superclass reference level. So it's your responsibility to convert that into whatever class that you want to load. Currently, my class is com.box.box. Let us assume that you need to do a typecast, and once after that, you can call any kind of methods. One requirement while creating the object dynamically, currently you are creating an object dynamically, because you are, once after loading the class into the memory, that means you are working at the Java execution level, but not at the compile time level. So the loading of class here, once after loading, it will call the default constructor for the class file. So the requirement is the default constructor for this fully qualified class name should be available. If at all, if you are writing some parameterized constructor, then that means it's your responsibility to write the default constructor. That is our fundamental. So if you didn't write, and if you are loading the class by using this mechanism, then it will throw an exception saying that instantiation exception. So currently, my responsibility is to load the driver into the memory. So the first step, so to load the driver, you need to use the fully qualified class name. If you are not sure about the package, what kind of a package that your driver consists of, then go and verify within your jar file, which was provided by your vendor implementation. After that, you can create an instance. How to pass the parameter? Parameter means, Vijay?
If I don't have a default constructor and if I have my constructor takes parameter.
No, it's not possible.
Oh.
You should have a default constructor. So the second step is, once you have loaded the driver into the memory, then we have mentioned about the driver manager. You can ask the driver manager to go and get a connection. Ask the driver manager to get a connection to the database. So that means to the driver manager, you need to specify all the details, like what is the URL. URL is nothing but your IP address and port details. The URL will be specified normally in terms of the main protocol. This is the format you are supposed to follow. Sub protocol. After that, the name of, IP address, and then port. So the main protocol is your Java, and the sub protocol is your MySQL. So sub protocol, normally it will change based on the vendor implementation. And once after that, your IP address, currently my IP address is localhost. And after that, you need to specify which schema you want to connect. So currently my schema is JavaDB. As of now, it's not required, Soumya. You can just debug whether you can create or call any kind of those stuff. Once you have prepared the URL, it should be in the same format, or else your Java will complain that it was not able to establish the connection to the specified URL. And the next one is username. Currently username is root, and also the password. So whenever you are asking the driver manager to get a connection, you are supposed to specify the URL, username, password. These three are the parameters that you are supposed to specify during the method call.
Okay.
Yep.
What is a JavaDB?
This is the schema. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Now, so when it has called driver manager, when we have asked the driver manager to get the connection based on all these details, the driver manager verifies in the memory, are there any driver classes available or not? So previously you have already loaded one driver class in the memory. Then your driver manager will make use of the driver class, because it needs to understand what kind of database I'm trying to connect. Then based on looking at the driver class that got loaded into the memory, it will make use of the driver class, and then it will make use of all this information, and it will establish a connection to the database. So in the Java implementation, you are supposed to call get connection, which is a static method from driver manager class. Here you need to pass three parameters, which are username, password, and URL. So the return type get connection will provide you a connection between your Java application and MySQL server, which means it will return a connection object. See, anytime you are working, we have mentioned that all the classes are implemented by the MySQL, but you are not supposed to choose any classes that are related to MySQL package. You just select the base interfaces. Anyway, it can easily refer to interfaces, and that's the standard. You are supposed to go ahead, as long as you can just go ahead and use only the top level or superclass references. That is related to database question, Vijay. You are supposed to answer for that. So the next step is driver manager, ask the driver manager to get a connection. Now you got the connection to MySQL server. Once you got the connection to any database, come back to our MySQL workbench also. You have opened the MySQL workbench, which will create a connection to the server. Whenever you see the server status is running, it is still calculating. Whenever you see the server status is running from your workbench, you are able to establish the connection to the server, and you are able to connect to your schema, which is JavaDB. And within your JavaDB, you have created one table, forget about the second one, employee table, and I have inserted some data in that. So that means to connect to the server, first of all, you need to have the connection to this particular instance, which is our first step. And once after that, you need to have the connection, the established connection. So whenever I have opened this, it will ask me to enter the username and password. So currently it was not required because they are available in the memory itself. I'm able to open one instance of the database client. You can assume that this is just like the database client. And after that, our responsibility is to write a query. To write a query in terms of Java language now. You can't execute directly select star from employee from our Java code. You are supposed to take some help from different classes. So currently, you got already one class, which is a connection class. Your connection class is the top level one, which will create an SQL statement, and also which will perform the execution, and also which will retrieve the result. So the connections we need to ask by using connection class. Connection class, you are supposed to create a statement object. So the statement object, you can ask, like, we can go for table execution kind of stuff, or we can go for table data query with some inputs. Let us say select star from employee where salary equal to 2000 and employee ID equal to 20. So that is just like the parameter accepting. And also you can call procedures that are also available with respect to Java. So the statement is available in three types. The first one is plain statement, and the next one is repair statement, and the next one is callable statement. So Java has provided different interfaces or classes for each level. The first one is statement, which is used to execute, or which is used for creating general queries. The next one is prepare statement is a bit faster. Execution will be a bit faster because it stores the previously executed statements to the database, and if you are trying to execute the same statement again, it will retrieve the information from the cache kind of stuff. It will retrieve, not the information, it will retrieve the query from the cache. And also, if you want to pass some parameters dynamically, because we don't want to pass any kind of static data to our query. Our information normally will be received from the client end, and we want to pass the data dynamically to our query. So whatever the query that you write, select star from employee where employee ID equal to a question mark. So the question mark was supposed to be filled by our GUI representation or our client, because we don't want to work with static data like employee ID equal to 100. So those kind of stuff will be done with respect to prepared statement and the callable statements, which is used for procedures, or you can say functions in terms of PostgreSQL. So whatever the object that you want to create, you are supposed to ask the connection, just like interlinking between the classes or interfaces. So you need to ask the connection object. You have created a connection object, call a method called create statement, which will provide you the statement object. So this is our SQL. In terms of our Java language, this is our SQL, which we want to execute with respect to our connection. Once you got the connection and once you are able to create the statement object, the next thing is with respect to our database. I'm just simulating the steps, whatever that we are performing with respect to our database and how they have converted with respect to our Java code. So here what we are doing, we are selecting and we are clicking on the button execute SQL script. In the same way, in Java also, the fourth statement is executing the query. To execute the query, you need to use your statement object and you need to call the method execute, which will execute the query with respect to the database and provides you the actual response. With respect to execute also, there are three types. The first one is execute, and the next one is execute query, and the next one is execute update. These are all interview questions. You are supposed to remember what is the purpose and why we are having the statement, prepare statement and callable statement, and also why we are having execute, execute query, and execute update method. The execute query method is normally used to execute the query with the database, and it provides the output. Output in the sense, if you have executed a select query, you will get some kind of output. Here you can see that when I'm executing this query, I'm getting 7 or 10 rows. Let us change this one, where employee ID equal to 11. When I execute like this, I got only one result, and let us change this one and retrieve only one column. So there are different options to retrieve the data, and here you can see that within your database itself, you are able to retrieve the data from the same table in 3 different manners. So in the same way, you are going to execute the query from Java code. That means you won't be sure that what kind of data that will be returned from the query execution, and the data will be stored, the output will be stored in terms of a special class, which is result set class. I guess this is an interface. So the data, whatever the data that it might receive from the query execution, either it will receive more number of rows or it will receive only one row or only one column, that doesn't matter. The data will be stored in an object called result set object, and we'll see how to fetch the object from the result set later. So normally the purpose of result set is to store the information which is retrieved from the database.
So many of our students have given testimonials on how our training programs are. You will find them on kudzu.com and on our website H2KInfosys.com. On our website H2KInfosys.com, you will also find more detailed information on who we are, the courses that we offer, what each course covers. Also, if you're interested in a demo program, please register on our homepage on the left-hand side. Just give us more information about yourself and we will send you a link for a demo class. The demo class is absolutely free. Experience our commitment by just attending an orientation workshop at no cost. Our team of faculty and advisors are here to guide you with the right information. If you still have more questions, please feel free to call us. Call us at 770-777-1269. This is a United States number. If you're calling from the UK, call us at 020-337-17615. You can also email us at training@h2kinfosys.com or h2kinfosys@gmail.com. Thank you for watching our videos. We wish you a great career in information technology.